Are you ready, boys? Are you ready? It's another week. It's another week of the bigs. It's been another fantastic week. And I also have a little bit of an announcement to make. I went out and because I love you guys so much and I love doing this, went out and purchased a brand new microphone. So the audio is going to be better than ever on this. At some point, I will be doing video much better than this. And I think at some point I might be taking this show to Twitch. For those of you unfamiliar with Twitch, it's mostly a gaming website. You get to watch a lot of guys do some really awesome speed runs on some games or whatnot. But I'm going to use that platform for this show, specifically for you guys, but also to get a few more eyeballs on what I want to do in the future. I've told you guys starting this back in week one that eventually I want to turn this into a podcast, that eventually I want to turn this into something that I do, in my spare time, in conjunction with this league, but more on the bigger scale of baseball in general. But that's another story for another time. Again, that's big time dreams and things down the road that I've got planned. For now, let's jump right into it and get this party started. This week, the number one overall team, James McCloskey's Stanton Room Only, took on Jimmy Dunlap's JD17, former number one overall team. And Jimmy takes it down 12-7. Close categories this week. Jimmy won by 1 error and 2 saves and a walk by a pitcher. James won by 2 doubles, a loss, .06 in whip, and they tied in stolen bases and home runs. For Jimmy, who won the week, the only thing that I saw that was interesting was on Friday, he left Max Kepler on the bench, who went 3 for 4 with a home run, a double, 4 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. But Albert Almora went 0 for 4 in his center field spot. Kepler was batting first in a really hot Twins order. Albert Almora, who was hot on his own, and I don't blame Jimmy for starting him and picking him up, but he was batting 8th. Both games were at home. I look at it like, sure, Almora was hot at the time, but Kepler's been hot all season. That lineup has been unbelievable. The Twins are one of the best teams in baseball. And, it hurts to see that kind of production on the bench. It wouldn't have mattered. Those 3 particular stats, the double would have brought him within 1, but the home run, RBIs, and runs scored, Jimmy won them all anyway. Otherwise, it was a great week for him. He went 6 for 26. That's a .231 batting average on his bench. 5 runs, 3 doubles, a homer, 5 RBIs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, and an error. As far as roster moves are concerned, the one thing that upset me, maybe upset's not the word, but it looks like he dropped J Happ initially for Chase Anderson. And I was eyeing J Happ so bad for his start late in the week. And Jimmy was up late, and I could tell that Jimmy's one of the guys who I see his name pop up in roster moves at midnight my time, which is 3 o'clock in the morning East Coast. So if I see any of you guys picking up guys at midnight, I know that you've put the dedication in to get up. Make sure you get that roster move in. For me, I'm awake most of the time because I work nights. So I have the advantage of, as soon as that day kicks over for me, I have the advantage to start picking up as many guys as I can or want. So to see Jimmy, I don't know where you live, Jimmy, but to see his name pop up to pick up J Happ again, I wanted that start so badly. It was a very good start for him. It was, if I can find him, there he is. It was 6 innings, a win, 10 strikeouts at Kansas City. He did give up 3 runs, but it's a quality start. I saw that start, and I wanted in on that. And don't get me wrong, J Happ hasn't had a great season thus far, but he's definitely a guy that I saw on the waiver wire. Like that's a target I want for a streamer. And Jimmy beat me to it, and I think it was only by a matter of minutes. For James, he had an incredibly interesting week. On his bench, he went 7 for 17. That's a .412 batting average. 4 runs, 2 doubles, a homer, 4 RBIs, 2 steals, and 5 strikeouts. We talked about this morning, James and I, as we work together. James is having an interesting spot in his utility position, mostly because he has to make a decision between Hunter Renfroe and Kevin Kiermaier. And for the most part, Renfroe plays every day and he's got a ton of power, but Kiermaier was hitting so well to start the season, and especially with Kiermaier's speed, he didn't want to lose out on those stolen bases, lose out on those potential triples and doubles, but it's at the expense of losing out on Renfroe's power, such as Friday when he left Renfroe in a 3-run homer on the bench and Kevin Kiermaier was over 4. The home run wouldn't have mattered that much. All told, the stats that James left on his bench, the only thing that would have mattered is the 4 RBIs. This 2 steals is interesting too, because they tied in steals. The thing about James's 2 steals was that they were on Sunday, and they were from Kevin Kiermaier, who was in the lineup, was out of the lineup, excuse me, probably as a direct result of the game on Friday where Hunter Renfroe hit a 3-run homer. He misses out on the double, the 2 runs, and the 2 steals, and that kind of cost him that category. The other thing that I want to give James credit for is he streamed very well this week with one exception. He got Eric Fedde on, I believe it was Monday, went 5 innings, 1 earned, and a no decision. Eric Lauer, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, 1 earned, and a win. Drew Smyly against, I think it was, I forget who the start was against. Drew Smyly threw 6 innings. Oh, it was against the Angels. 6 innings, 3 earned, 4 strikeouts, 4 walks, 2 homers, but he got the win. And finally, Jason Vargas, who, if you're a Mets fan, you hate Jason Vargas with a passion for a lot of reasons. But 5 innings, 3 strikeouts, and 3 walks, and only 1 earned for no decision. If you just took those 4 starts, that would be an incredibly good streaming week. It would be a grand total of like 6 earned runs over 23 innings. It'd be a solid, and 2-0. He didn't catch a loss. The problem was he also streamed Matt Harvey, and Matt Harvey went up against Minnesota. Minnesota, like I said, is one of, if not the hottest teams in baseball, and Matt Harvey did not survive it. He went 2 2/3, 4 homers, a walk, a strikeout. He gave up 8 earned runs. It took the loss, and now he's landed himself on the DL. Like, Matt Harvey is not good anymore, and I don't think anybody should be streaming him. I mean, he's playing on an Angels team with not a whole lot of offense. The bullpen's not very good. He's just not a streaming option in my mind. As far as roster moves are concerned, again, James was just streaming like crazy, including Ryan Stanek on Sunday. The big move that James made this week was on the 20th. He got a hold of Jose Ramirez for Julio Teheran and Jonathan Schoop. Ramirez brings an incredible amount of value to James's team, if for no other reason than it's a very, very big buy low situation. Look, nobody's going to tell you that Jose Ramirez is one of the best players in baseball this year. He's not. He's hitting 197 right now. He's got 4 homers, 15 RBIs, and 12 steals. The 12 steals is really nice. You probably peg him for for 25 to 30 this year. But where's that batting average? Where's the power? Where's the runs scored? Where is anything that somebody would have drafted Jose Ramirez in the first round for? But to put him on a team that's in first place right now with Cody Bellinger and Joey Gallo and CJ Cron, who's tearing it up, and Byron Buxton, who's playing well, and Yandy Diaz, who's having a breakout season, and the two big bats that James has sitting, lurking on his DL in Stanton and Judge. If Ramirez turns it around and he gets Judge and Stanton back, and Gallo and Bellinger keep up what they're doing, that's an unstoppable lineup. And to only give up Jonathan Schoop and Julio Teheran he picked up off of the waiver wire 2 weeks prior. So he gave up a guy who he had in his lineup and drafted, I don't know, I would imagine after the 15th round in Jonathan Schoop. And Julio Teheran, who he picked up off the waiver wire for a first round pick. Incredible value. Key players for the week. For Jimmy, who won the week, Anthony Rizzo had himself a very, very good week. He hit 500, 563 on base percentage, 8 runs, 3 doubles, 3 homers, 10 RBIs, a steal, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts. The Cubs played Philadelphia and Cincinnati at home, and he had an incredible week. You know, he had a 4-for-5 performance on the 23rd with a homer and 3 RBIs. He hit 3 homers in successive days. Just an absolutely monster week out of Anthony Rizzo. Gary Sanchez is number 2. 292 average, a 346 on base, 5 runs, 3 homers, 9 RBIs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, and an error. And Max Muncy, 261 average, 320 on base, 7 runs, 3 doubles, a homer, 2 RBIs, a steal, 2 walks, and a strikeout. Pitching-wise for Jimmy, it's Brad Peacock. Brad Peacock went 11 innings, 17 strikeouts, and a walk, no earned runs, and an 0.64 whip. His starts were against Boston and the White Sox. Both of them were very good. He got the win against Chicago. He got a no decision against Boston. Brad Peacock's been really, really good. And for a guy that Jimmy initially drafted in the 17th round and has dropped and picked back up twice now, he definitely has earned a roster spot, and I don't see him going anywhere. Brad Hand got the one and only save. I'm sorry, one of the 2 saves that Jimmy's team got and won with. Brad Hand, 2 innings, a save, 3 strikeouts, a walk, 2 relief appearances, nothing earned. And finally, Mike Minor has been an interesting story this year. This week he goes 12 innings, 2.25 ERA, 16 strikeouts, a win, a home run given up, 3 walks. It's a 2.25 ERA and a 1.17 whip. The starts came against Seattle and the Angels. The start against Seattle was the better start. 6 innings, 11 strikeouts, and the win. The start against the Angels was not bad. It was a quality start. 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and a homer. Jimmy improves to 4th place, and James stays atop the rankings, though his lead shrinks quite a bit. It was a very, very. This looked to be a blowout matchup early, as Jimmy jumped out to a 14-4 lead early, and James just started whittling away at that lead, bringing it all the way down to the final score of 7-12. He had it down to 8-12 on Saturday. I'm not quite sure what stat flipped. I think it was doubles, but I could be wrong. Moving on. We move on to Teoscar named Desire taking on Nick Homan's The Beavers. Mike Haber came in as the number 2 overall seed, and the Beavers came in at number 14. The Beavers takes this down, which I was very surprised by. Nick took Nick took a pretty big lead into Sunday, and Mike turned it around, almost got the win here. The score ends 10-9 in favor of the Beavers. Close categories this week for Nick. He won by 2 doubles, a save, and 3 strikeouts. For Mike, it was a triple, 2 strikeouts, a win, a walk by a pitcher, and a relief appearance, and they tied in stolen bases and walks offensively. Excuse me. For Nick, Nick was pretty barren on his bench this week. The only thing that stuck out was a Yasiel Puig 3-run homer on the bench, that was on Friday, while Franmil Reyes and George Springer went a combined 0 for 6 in right field and utility, respectively. Otherwise, like I said, it was a 3 for 9 week. That's a .333 batting average, 2 runs, a homer, 3 RBIs, and three strikeouts on the bench for Nick. Nick also made a pretty big trade as well on Wednesday. He traded Chris Bryant for John Lester and Caleb Smith. So it looks like he felt like he needed to get some pitching depth on this roster. You know, the Caleb Smith slots in, it looks like, as his number 3 behind DeGrom and Bieber, which is pretty impressive. Caleb Smith's having an incredible season so far, this most recent start notwithstanding. And John Lester slots in, I guess, as his number 4 or 5, depending on where you have Marcus Stroman this year. And in giving up Chris Bryant, I don't like it as far as losing the third baseman, because if you're believing in Gio Urshela going forward or DJ LeMahieu, that's all well. I guess you believe in Miguel Sano. I guess you believe in Miguel Sano, and you'll play Rhys Hoskins most days at first base, which makes sense because your outfield was a bit crowded with Bryant there. You have Rosario, you have Puig, you have Reyes, you have McCutchen, you have Springer. You know, there's a lot of outfielders to play, and to get 2 solid starters for a guy in Chris Bryant that, you know, you drafted him in the second round. He's having a good season. You know, to flip him for 2 starters who are doing well, I don't blame you a single bit. The one thing that kind of struck me as a head scratcher was you dropped Colin McHugh and picked up Kike Hernandez, but then when the trade went through, you dropped Kike Hernandez. I don't know. I feel like there's somebody else out there that you could have been dropping. You know, as it was, I don't know if these guys were rostered at the time, but you had John Gray, you had Adam Wainwright, you had Corbin Martin, and you had Cody Allen somewhere on the roster at some point. And you dropped all 4 of those guys this week, so I don't know. Also interesting move on Sunday was dropping Ryan McMahon and picking up Tim Beckham, but then immediately after dropping Tim Beckham and picking up Billy Hamilton. I guess you were chasing steals, considering it was tied. I can understand that. You know, you're trying to get that last one. Just a wasted move. It is what it is. For Mike, however, an interesting week for him as well. 14 for 46 on the bench. That's a .304 average. 8 runs, 2 doubles, a triple, 2 homers, 8 RBIs, 5 walks, and 13 strikeouts. That all hurts to see. Specifically, the doubles would have tied it up, and the RBIs, not the RBIs, the walks would have won it for him. Jock Peterson on Friday went 2 for 2 with a run, the triple, and an RBI on the bench. And left field was open for Mike. I don't know if that was a purposeful drop or a purposeful bench for any particular reason, but to see somebody with their left field position wide open and a left field eligible player on the bench with a triple, that has to be frustrating to see. Otherwise, I think Lourdes Gurriel was a late add by Mike. And if he was, then I have to take some of those stats away from his bench because I counted them on his bench. But I think Lourdes Gurriel, who by the way, on Sunday went 4 for 4, a homer, 3 runs, 2 RBIs, and a double. So if all of that was not technically eligible for him, then I would have to take that away from his bench spot or his bench stats, and that certainly changes things. But if he was eligible, Paul DeJong and Cesar Hernandez went 0 for 5 with 2 walks combined at second and short. Key players for this week. For Nick, who won the week, it was Eddie Rosario. Eddie Rosario had a big week, 444 average, a 464 on base, 7 runs scored, 2 doubles, 3 homers, 10 RBIs. He had a steal, a walk, 4 strikeouts, and an error. Andrew McCutchen also had a big week, 345 average, a 424 on base percentage, 6 runs scored, 5 doubles. You know, Nick won by 2 doubles and had 12 for the week, and McCutchen nearly hit half of them. McCutchen also had 2 homers, 7 RBIs, a steal, 4 walks, and 8 strikeouts. And finally, Rhys Hoskins, 304 average, 469 on base percentage, 5 runs, a double, 2 homers, 5 RBIs, a steal, 8 walks, and 5 strikeouts. You know, for a team who had 5 steals, you would have expected, I don't know, Elvis Andrus to have 3 of them, or Billy Hamilton to have two of them, or Yasiel Puig to have 1 of them. These steals came from Andrus, Rosario, Hamilton, McCutchen, and Hoskins. You know, they were from the most bizarre spots in my eyes. Pitching wise for Nick, it was not a good week pitching wise for Nick. He pitched to a 4.65 ERA and a 1.48 WHIP. He only won 3 categories pitching-wise. That was innings, saves, and strikeouts. So for me, I give the first key player for Nick to Craig Stammen, who had 3 relief appearances, which was 3 innings, a save, and 4 strikeouts. He obviously filled in for Kirby Yates at some point. It looks like it was Friday, and got the save. Shane Bieber had another good start, 5 innings, 10 strikeouts, 1 earned run. The 4 walks is kind of troubling. It was against Tampa at home, but these strikeout numbers have been there for Bieber, and I believe they'll continue to be there. But the 4 walks equates to a 1.60 WHIP, so it's not the greatest start in the world. And Jake DeGrom had a good start as well. 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, 3 walks, a homer, a 1.50 ERA, and 0.83 WHIP. The start came at home against Washington. We are kind of seeing that the Washington Nationals are falling apart without Bryce Harper. I think it's something like 10 games under 500. It's interesting to see how the NL East is shaking out this year. I digress. Moving on to Mike's team, Cesar Hernandez had a great week for him. It was a 333 batting average, no walks, so it's the same on base percentage. 2 runs, a double, a triple, a homer, 4 RBIs. I gave it to Cesar Hernandez because of that triple, because it was the only triple hit in this matchup. As well, I will give it to Clint Frazier, who hit 429 coming off the DL with a 529 on base percentage, 5 runs, a double, a homer, 4 RBIs, a steal, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, and an error. You know, Clint Frazier came off the DL a while back, maybe 2 weeks ago or so, and he just wasn't hitting right. All of a sudden this week he came to life, and it's probably saved his job so far, because coming off the DL and seeing guys get healthy for the Yankees, you know, he might be the odd guy out in that outfield with, you know, when Judge comes back, when Stanton comes back, with Aaron Hicks now healthy, with Brett Gardner playing as well as he is. You know, Clint Frazier is not really going to see much time. Honestly, I think they might end up using him as trade bait by season's end to go get somebody, but we'll see if that actually happens. Finally, Eugenio Suarez hit 400 with a 417 on base percentage, 4 runs, a double, a homer, 6 RBIs, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts with an error. Now, if I know Mike Haber, I know he's staring at this screen going, you missed somebody. I'll get to him. Pitching-wise, Mike Soroka is having himself a breakout season. You know, the guy this week pitched 14 innings, 2 starts against San Francisco and St. Louis. He had 12 strikeouts, a win, a home run, a walk. Overall, it was a 1.29 ERA and an 0.57 whip. The guy is pitching to a 1.07 ERA over 50 innings. That's better than Clayton Kershaw numbers in his prime. Like it's sick. Tommy Kahnle helped win relief appearances for Mike. He won relief appearances by 1. Tommy Kahnle had 3 relief appearances, 3 innings. I'm sorry. Wrong spot. There we go. Tommy Kahnle had 3 relief appearances, 3 innings, a win. Did give up a homer, but 5 strikeouts over those 3 innings. He had a 3 ERA with an 0.67 whip. And finally, Madison Bumgarner. You know, it's a shame. If Bumgarner pitched anywhere other than San Francisco, he'd probably be talked about a bit more. Granted, he's pitching to a 4.10 ERA this season, has had a couple of bad starts, but this week was a pretty decent one. 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks, a 3 ERA, a 1.33 whip. The start came at home against Atlanta. He did give up a home run in the start, and, you know, because the team is bad, he got a no decision. Overall, Mike moves to 3rd, and Nick stays at 14th. Nick's going to have to string together some wins here in order to start moving up the rankings. You know, he's in the neighborhood of 20 games under 500. Mike is well over 30 games over 500. So to see a guy like Mike, who is a perennial playoff contender, nearly get doubled up. Because going into Sunday, it was 12-6 in favor of Nick, and Nick played well. I'm not taking anything away from Nick here. You know, Mike had every opportunity to flip this and get a win. He certainly turned it into what I would consider a good loss. You know, anytime you can you can lose and not lose by more than 3 categories, I consider it a good loss. So this is a good loss if you have to take one. And we move on. We'll move on to me. I took on Barry Nisman this week. It was Feast or Famine versus Kikuchi Kuchiku. Barry came in 12th place. He took the loss here. I doubled him up 14-7. On my bench this week, I went 14 for 59. That's a 237 batting average. 7 runs, 4 homers, 7 RBIs, a stolen base, 2 walks, and 19 strikeouts. On Wednesday, my team went 4 for 13 on the bench, 4 runs, 2 homers, 3 RBIs, a steal, and 3 strikeouts. I ended up benching 2 of my White Sox in Eloy Jimenez and Yoan Moncada. They were facing Garrett Cole, and I think the game was in Houston, if I remember correctly. Yes. So against Garrett Cole in Houston, I didn't feel very confident. However, my other option was Juan Soto against Jacob deGrom, and I think that game was in Queens. So I didn't really have a good option for left field. You know, Juan Soto went 1 for 4. Juan Soto has been incredibly hot, but Eloy Jimenez hit 2 home runs on my bench, and Yoan Moncada stole a base. And I ended up losing steals by 1, so that's like the really, really frustrating thing. On top of that, Jorge Polanco's game got postponed, and that game got postponed very late. So I could have put one of them in the lineup. It would have been Moncada first, so that would have gotten me the steal. Just a frustrating moment. The next day, the 23rd, Eloy Jimenez went yard again, but this time Juan Soto went 3 for 3 with a triple and a double against Mats. So I felt better about that one than I did the day before. But you know, it's one of the curses of having as many talented guys as I do on offense. Hashtag trade me a pitcher. I've got 5 outfielders that could be starting. You know, I say 4 to 5 because I don't know how everybody feels about Stephen Piscotty. I picked him up off the waiver wire as my backup right fielder. But my infield is incredibly stacked, and I'm still, you know, struggling to find ways to get everybody in it at a certain time. This week's moves for me, my biggest regret was picking up Carlos Estevez. When I saw that Wade Davis went down with the oblique injury, I was running to get Scott Oberg. And of course, you know, bullpen master Ben Nisman decided to go ahead and pick up Oberg because he doesn't have enough closers on his roster. And so I said, okay, who's the guy with the biggest upside? You know, Estevez has a bit of closers experience. He was in that role a couple of years ago. He's got an incredible K per 9. He's got a good K to walk ratio. So I felt like that was a good move as a dark horse candidate to take over the role. He went out and gave up 4 fucking homers the next fucking outing. So thank you very fucking much, Mr. Carlos fucking Estevez. Fuck off. I streamed Daniel Norris. He did well for me. I streamed Trevor Richards. He did well. I streamed Merrill Kelly, and finally the streak of Merrill Kelly doing well on my roster and nobody else's has come to an end, as he went 1 2/3, gave up 4 walks, and had a 21.60 ERA. I got a lot of late relief appearances out of guys like Drew Gagno and Jonathan Holder and Matt Andriese and Luis Cessa, and that helped me win that category. For Barry, it was a very uneventful week on his bench. He went 9 for 37, which is a 243 batting average, 3 runs, 2 doubles, a homer, 3 RBIs, a walk, 7 strikeouts, and an error. Nothing to write home about. You know, there was not that many stats that nothing on that bench would have altered anything. I blew him out in doubles. I blew him out in homers. I blew him out in RBIs. I blew him out in walks. So it's a case of there wasn't enough stats there to win those categories this week. I mean, I hit 17 homers this week, even with the 3 from Eloy Jimenez on the bench. So for Barry, the only thing that I point to is Brian Goodwin being on the bench on, Thursday, and Leury Garcia going 1 for 5 with 2 strikeouts in left field. That's nitpicking. I mean, that's nitpicking. That's matchup based. I'm sure that's, you know, it is what it is. It happens. Key players this week, for me, it's Juan Soto. Juan Soto hit 500 with a 533 on base percentage, 7 runs, 2 doubles, the triple, 2 homers, 8 RBIs, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. You know, Juan Soto has been slow to start. He had that DL stint, but he's hitting 288 now. He's got 8 homers and 35 RBIs. He's got 3 steals. I could see this dude hitting 300 by the end of the year. I could see this dude hitting 25 homers, you know, driving in 80 runs and having 10 to 15 steals. You know, I traded away JD Martinez for him and Baez, and if those two, like I said, I see those two hitting me 60 homers. I don't think that's unreasonable. Tommy Pham is number 2 for me this week, a 360 average, a 429 on base percentage, 5 runs, 2 doubles, 3 homers, 7 RBIs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. And finally, once again, it's Jorge Polanco, man. Jorge Polanco has been fantastic for me. You know, I picked him up. I dropped Dansby Swanson for him because I believed in the Minnesota offense before the season started. And I figured that Jorge Polanco would get just enough time with Francisco Lindor being down that if he failed and fell on his face, I'd drop him and I'd have Lindor. And he has been everything I could have asked for and so much more. This week he hit 273 with a 429 on base percentage, 5 runs, 2 doubles, a homer, 5 RBIs, 6 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Polanco's hitting 335 this year. He's got 9 dingers and 26 RBIs. The big thing about Polanco, though, is the run scored total. He's already got 33 in 52 games. You know, he hits second in that order. He's got a 1,002 OPS. You know, he's just a solid contact hitter. He's the stereotypical number 2 hitter in that lineup. And nobody wants him. Nobody wants to trade for him, and I don't get it. Like, I get it. He's only shortstop eligible. Come get him. I'm sure some of you guys are starting some really garbage fucking shortstops. Pitching-wise for me, Zach Britton got me a save. Unexpectedly. 3 relief appearances, 3 innings, a win, a save, a strikeout. Nothing earned, and a 1.33 whip. I believe Chapman went like 2 or 3 days in a row, so they wanted to give him some rest. The game was against Baltimore. It was in Baltimore, and he got the save, which is the deciding save in this matchup. Barry did get one from Blake Parker. I got one from Shane Green, and I got one from Zach Britton. Chris Paddock had a great start. 6 innings, a win, 7 strikeouts, 1 earned against Arizona. I was disappointed because he was going to have a 2-start week, and he was going to start against Toronto on Sunday. But he woke up with a stiff neck and didn't start, which is disappointing because I really wanted to try to. It almost cost me strikeouts as a category because I benched Eduardo Rodriguez against Houston, and Barry had a couple of guys going late. Brandon Woodruff, I know, was one of them, and we'll get to him in a minute. But you know, Woodruff went 8 innings and nearly came back to win strikeouts for Barry. Finally, on my team, it was Jose Barrios, who's been a really good number 2. You could argue he's been the ace of my staff so far, with Trevor Bauer being as up and down as he is. Barrios went 6 2/3 with a win, 4 strikeouts, and 1 earned against Chicago. You know, like I said, he's been the stereotypical number 2 in my rotation. And he's been great. Moving on to Barry's team, Starling Marte had a good week for him. 273 average, 385 on base percentage, 3 runs, 2 doubles, a homer, 2 RBIs, a stolen base, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts with an error. Barry picked up Gregory Polanco a while back, and I thought, all right, he's getting the entire Pittsburgh outfield, because he also had Melky Cabrera on his roster from time to time. I just don't like Pittsburgh as a team in general outside of Josh Bell this year. So, and I've never been a Starling Marte guy. I've never thought that he had the average or the home runs to be worth where people were drafting him. And, I mean, this year, he's hitting 253, 5 homers and 8 steals with 19 RBIs. What's his run total, I wonder? It's a decent question. He's only got 26 runs over 41 games. I think he did spend a bit on the DL. So, you know, it's